How many of you know what SOFR stands for? Well, I just had to look at it. It's the Secured Overnight Financing Rate. It is the biggest commodity market involving interest rates in the world. It's enormous in size. Why do I mention it? Because I think buying puts on SOFR are of great interest to me and are one of my major positions in my portfolio, which I also recommend heartily to newsletter readers. Why do I recommend this? Because of the very unusual situation going on with interest rates. Specifically, since September, we've had a split between what the government, I'm talking about the Federal Reserve, wants interest rates to do, which is to cut them, and what the market wants interest rates to do, which is push them higher, meaning the bond market goes down. Since September, when the 30-year Treasury bond had a yield of 3.6, I think, 3.7%. Today, even though the Fed has said, oh, we're pushing interest rates down, now that 30-year T-bond is yielding 4.5, 4.6%, close to the highs that it got to right under 5%. What does that mean? That means that the ability of the Fed to control interest rates comes under severe question. Why have interest rates on the long term been going up? As I put in my newsletter, the number of factors that are causing interest rates to go up seldom been greater than they are today. And we'll go over a couple of them. Clearly, one of them is that inflation, which surged starting in 2021, continues to be much higher than what we would like to have. But on top of inflation, you have the enormous size of the federal deficit. The federal deficit, which is, I think, now running at like 2 trillion a year, and the overall federal debt, which is something like 36 trillion at a record levels compared to the gross domestic product, the GDP. And then on top of that, you have, from my standpoint, very questionable financial policies by the Biden administration, most notably the sanctions they put on Russia following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has been one of the factors, in my opinion, causing the credibility of the US dollar as the world reserve currency to come under an increasing question. All of those factors and more are causing what I think could be a significant increase in interest rates continuing through 2025. And one reason I think that's possible is that the comparison to past history is best illustrated by what happened under the Fed chairman Paul Volcker in the late 1970s and 1980s. If you may recall, we had very high inflation at that point, and those high inflation numbers were causing interest rates to go up very significantly. And this was one of the reasons, probably the biggest reason, why Paul Volcker came in as Fed chairman. And what he did, which was a brilliant and of great benefit to the whole country, was say, I'm not going to worry about interest rates. The only thing I'm going to worry about that we definitely control, meaning the Fed, is how much money out is there. And we are going to say that the increase rate of money creation is going to be brought down. The trend is going to go down. As a result of that, he was able to eventually reduce the very heavy inflation, which at one point got to double digits levels, and that was and restored the value of the U.S. dollar. Well, in my opinion, boy, could we use a Paul Volcker today, but it's a very difficult thing to allow interest rates to go where they would when, in the case of Volcker, they went up at one point. I think the Treasury bonds, the 10-year Treasury bond, had a coupon of something like 14 or 15%. And in today's environment, with the amount of national debt being as large as it is, and the amount of the federal budget that has to be devoted just to paying interest on the national debt being so high, that the ability to use that manner of restoring low inflation, which is to say allowing interest rates to go as high, controlling the growth of the money supply to very low levels, very difficult for the government to do, and would almost certainly cause a severe recession. Therefore, I think the factors that are causing interest rates to go up, despite the efforts by the Fed, will continue and even accelerate. So the question is, as I mentioned, SOFR, how do you make money as a speculator on that? And the answer is buying puts on the SOFR, which you can do a full year out for the December 2025 SOFR contract. And what I have done and recommend that you consider is buying puts that cost about $100. Currently, those puts for December 2025 are for the SOFR of 94.5, 94.75, in that range. And what that means is if you subtract 94.5 from 100, you get the interest rate that implies will be available for SOFR in a year in December, and that would be like 5.5%, 94.5 subtracted from 100. Right now, you can buy those puts for $100. But if interest rates during 2025 went 6.5%, which would be a full 100 basis points, a full point above 5.5, then that put that you bought for $100 would be worth $2,500. And if the interest rate went not to 6.5 but to 7.5, now we're talking you take $100 to $5,000. And of course, the great thing about puts is that unlike buying futures, which you could also do, the most you can lose is the $100. So you don't have to worry about margin calls and so on and so forth. And as I mentioned, the market is enormous, so you can very easily get in and out and do that too. So I am pounding on the table saying Bob Leppo thinks the best way to make money from a increase in interest rates is buying December 2025 SOFR puts at around $100. And the great thing about that is you can take a small percent of your liquid assets and have it sort of like a hedge, a cheap hedge. Do that in that fashion. So I recommend you consider that and join me in what could be, unfortunately for so many people, a disastrous economic, probably a severe recession at minimum by covering yourself very successfully in holding on to your capital or even increasing it.